Well. It's Tuesday, October 29th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm Bob Harris. And this is the Audible YouTube channel, and it's time to go on the hot seat. But first, footballguys.com. That's the website. I appreciate you joining me here every Tuesday at this time with a guest. Also, Saturdays at 11 a.m. Eastern Time for the Ask Me Anything live streams. Those are always a good time. Hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. Like us, don't like us. We're big humans. We can handle this. If you haven't already done all those things, dial in, get some questions going. We're here to talk. And by we, I mean me and my guy, Tip Major. Tip, happy to have you on, man. How's it going?
Bob, first of all, anybody who doesn't like you, they need to come talk to me because I'll set them straight. Because you're the most awesome, most genuine, most helpful person that I've dealt with. You know, Greg Kellogg as well. I mean, you guys are awesome, man. I'm so blessed to be on here. I appreciate it so much. I'm ready to get into some news. I mean, this is crazy. We've got a lot of things going on, Bob, and I'm excited about it.
This is the big day. I'm not excited about all of it. I'm a big Anthony Richardson stan, have been all season long. And I obviously it's not been going the direction I wanted it to go or anyone who drafted him. Fortunately, many of us were able to get Jaden Daniels later on in the day in the draft. And so that worked out for us. And Jaden Daniels is what we all thought Anthony Richardson would be. But Anthony Richardson's not. So much so that he got the bench. He's going to take the pine for the Sunday night game against the Minnesota Vikings. We'll see how long it is. Joe Flacco's a perfect, maybe for our purposes, Tip, is this the best thing that could happen? We're not tempted to play him, and Flacco makes the other pieces better.
The Flacco makes all of the other pieces better. Definite truth. Yeah, as far as Flacco, there's other players out there. I still like Flacco in this situation, but yes, it does make the pieces, the wide receivers, the running backs, tight ends, it makes them relevant.
Yeah, I think so too. Josh Downs, but I also think, Tip, I mean, I think it's fair to say, and it's easy. I think Anthony Richardson opened the door to this with the tap out, right? I'm old people. I don't want to act like old people and say, you never do that, but you kind of never do that. You can kind of hear the reaction of his teammates and also the former players who kind of cover the game. I mean, Pat McAfee's reaction kind of was similar to how I felt. I just thought it was weird. Why would you do that? It's like a sign of not having all the awareness you need and maybe just a little bit of immaturity. He's a young man, doesn't have a lot of experience, but would we also not have been having a different conversation if, say, Tyler Goodson had caught that touchdown pass and Josh Downs' second score had counted as a second score and it was a 3-touchdown game?
Yeah, no, we definitely could be talking about, but I want to talk about that tap out because if you're tired, I understand. But look, you got Jonathan Taylor over there. You got a workhorse running back. How much energy do you need to hand it off to him? I look at it like that. I look at it as a situation. I understand you're running for your life. You get tired. And look, you can hand it off to your bell cow running back. So it was a very strange play. But yeah, as far as what Anthony Richardson has done for this team or hasn't done for this team, I think that they left some games on the table. I think especially with the Houston game, I think they could have won that game had Joe Flacco been in there. Yes, there were a couple of passes that were missed and a couple of plays that were missed. I get that. But that's just what comes with Anthony Richardson from time to time. I think Joe Flacco would have cleaned some of those plays up.
Right. So, let's also say, he completed 31% of his passes against Houston. You know who else did that? Josh Allen this very year, right? So, I mean, I'm not saying, Matt Waldman has a great article. Everybody out there, if you're watching this, go to footballguys.com and check out last week's Gut Check column. Matt Waldman goes pretty in depth on, his thoughts, and it has some comparisons to guys like Josh Allen, guys like Lamar Jackson, and their start to their career. And it's not that different, but it doesn't matter to us as fantasy managers right now. We need this production now. I'm still holding out hope that he gets back in. I'm going to hold on to him on my rosters. But I also, in a lot of the leagues where I drafted him, drafted a third quarterback. And that guy's name is Joe Flacco. So Chris Moore has had enough. And I get it if you've had enough. It's quarterback, right? We can move on, Tip. And there are other good quarterbacks out there. We'll talk about them. I'm also rooting for A-Rich. Legitimately didn't think he was unprecedented and takes whatever we're talking to very seriously. I think that's what we hope for. Right? We need some maturity. Also, Tip, can we maybe start wondering if let's see, Patrick Mahomes, Jordan Love. Maybe there's something to not like starting immediately, especially if your like entire starting experience is about a handful of games, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, having the experience, especially in the NFL, I don't care how big, how fast, how strong you are. There's always going to be somebody out there that's going to outsmart you in the NFL as far as these coordinators go, and he's just not ready yet. So going behind a veteran like Joe Flacco, I think that this is going to be good for the kid. Maybe Joe Flacco strings off some wins, and he shows him how to be a quarterback on the field. And that would be the best thing for him. I'm rooting for Anthony Richardson as well. I do not want to see somebody like that. They got a high draft pick on it.
Talent.
But you know what? You have to give credit. You got to give credit to Chris Ballard for having a contingency plan. That is what we talk about in fantasy football. That's what they talk about in real football. Because if the Miami Dolphins would have had a contingency plan, they may have strung away some wins when Tua was out too. So.
That's true. Question here: would you drop A-Rich in a super flex if there's limited bench space?
I'm still holding on to A-Rich. I'm kind of your sentiments on that. I'm going to hold on to him right now because of the simple fact that what if Joe Flacco gets injured? Joe Flacco's not the youngest quarterback in the league, and what if he doesn't show? What if he has a couple of games in a row where he's not showing? They're losing. Yeah. If they lose a couple of these games, the Texans are right now on the top of the division, right? Everybody else is kind of fighting and clawing themselves. But exactly. So the thing is with the Colts, if they try to string off some wins, or if they don't, they could be going back to Richardson again. But hopefully he learns from this, gets in the film room, and doesn't tap out. Get in the cardio room.
Right, I'm with you there. And by the way, Scampers, happy National Cat Day. Happy to have you here. So a couple, like if it's a shallow league and I have to churn and I need a starter, yes, I'm going to do that. But if it's possible, I'm going to hold on. The guy that we saw to start last season and for one game this year is still there. That super athletic high end upside. And I talk about this a lot. I'm going to continue talking about it. There is a difference between being a great NFL quarterback and being a great fantasy quarterback. You can be both things. You don't have to be both things, right? Mm-hmm. We look at a couple quarterbacks right now who are perfectly serviceable NFL quarterbacks. Maybe even the best quarterback, Patrick Mahomes, not a great fantasy quarterback. Just not. Because the offense, the Chiefs are winning without him having to throw all the touchdowns that made him a huge fantasy prospect. We're talking about Dak Prescott too right now. Jerry Jones mentioned that they don't want him running as much. Well, that isn't as good for us. And it's taking a guy who was a top 10 quarterback last year and keeping him outside the top 10. Still a good NFL quarterback. It's not a great fantasy quarterback. So look, maybe Anthony Richardson's never a great NFL quarterback, but for our purposes, might well be. Jaden Daniel, he's both. That guy is both. What did you think of the Hail Mary?
Yeah, it's funny. I was driving as I was listening to the game, and I got to the driveway and I stopped. I looked at the game because I immediately turned the car off. I looked at the game and I was like, okay, here we go. Scrambling. Throws the ball in the air. Oh my God, he caught it. That was that was just my reaction. It was crazy. It was insane. And you know what? The Washington Commanders, they not only hurt the Chicago Bears and the Chicago Bears fans, they kind of hurt the Philadelphia Eagles a little bit too. It was kind of cool to see that whole play hurt both teams in my point. So it was pretty cool.
Need Chicago Bears fans to tell me if they're okay after the handoff to the offensive lineman. That had to be what a painful call. Oh my gosh. What a self-inflicted wound. That was horrible. By the way, if you're looking for quarterbacks out there, Tip and I have some. We have a list of them. Some of the guys that we're talking about right now that I think are viable pickups. Bo Nix, obviously. We talked about him last week as well, Tip, and I think he's, if you didn't pick him up, well, you should have picked him up for Carolina. Maybe that will be his best game ever.
Right.
But also, I think he's pretty serviceable. Right now, he's, a fair chunk of what we hoped that Anthony Richardson would be. Russell Wilson, if he's still available, I won't see a lot of push for Justin Fields, even if he starts cutting in plays. Jameis Winston is the obvious big name here. Threw for 300 yards, first Browns quarterback to throw for 300 yards since 2021, I want to say. And so I think those are the quarterbacks I'm looking at. Matthew Stafford, how about that? And also, let's say you're in a bind and you're heading into this week and Jordan Love is your quarterback. would you spend maybe a 3 to 5% bid on Malik Willis going up against a Detroit defense that allowed the Tennessee Titans to throw the ball for the first time ever this year?
Yes. Yeah, and, you talked about Bo Nix. Bo Nix is playing against the Baltimore Ravens. And you just talked about Malik Willis. I'm happy we talked about him because of that simple fact of him playing against the Detroit Lions. Look, the Detroit Lions are going to stop you in the run game. That is their MO. But as far as the pass game, they're going to allow you to dink and dunk, throw some deep darts to them. So Malik Willis could have a decent game. And I would recommend, definitely spending about 3 to 5%, like you said, on him. But the number one guy has got to be Jameis Winston. Although this week they have a tough matchup against the Chargers, still has to be Jameis Winston. I think that this is just the beginning of what we're about to see with this team.
Right. We should not, we're going to acknowledge it, and we're going to talk about Cedric Tillis because I buzzed victory lap a little bit. I just want to mention his name, and that'll be my victory lap. Just like Bo Nix, saying the name is my victory lap. No, saying victory lap in association with the name and calling my attention to myself is the victory lap.
Well, Bob, can I give a victory lap for myself then, since we're victory lapping right now? Because Jameis Winston, I talked about him 3 weeks ago. There was a game that Deshaun Watson just did not look himself. I was crying, screaming, just putting posts out there. Put Jameis in, please. And then when Deshaun Watson gets hurt, they go out there and they put in DTR. And I'm like, what is going on? It's one of those situations, Bob, and I'm going to get on a quick soapbox. It's one of the situations for me, that's not a coaching decision. Coaches want to win. That is a front office decision to not have Jameis Winston come in there. I understand he was an emergency quarterback, but when he came in, he had 11 attempts and he had a touchdown, and almost immediately within 4 minutes of playing, or a few minutes of playing, he was there. It was so bizarre, and now I'm so happy he's there.
Look at Scamper Schefter out there breaking news for us in the chat, as he always does. Thank you, Scampers. They need Darrisaw's.
That's a great trade.
Darrisaw's gone. Yep. So good move by them. And yes, as Scampers added, let the fire sale begin. By the way, out there, I see the questions. We'll get to them probably as we talk about the position group. So I'll get back to a quarterback. And by the way, Chris, I'm sorry, we're not really doing sit-start questions. If you're looking to pick up whichever one you can. If it's an immediate need, maybe you lay off Jordan Love because he's got the groin issue. But either way, I'll get to start sits on Saturday or throughout the week on my radio program, which you can call in as well. There was what do we got here? Third quarterback for a super flex. Are you adding Jameis or Flacco?
Jameis. Me too. I believe in the Browns. I really do. I believe in the Colts too. I think they're both teams that you can go ride with, but I just feel like something special is about to happen with this Browns team. I just want, before we get too far into this though, let's acknowledge Jameis's great game and Cedric Tillman's great game, and all our victory lapping is based on one of the most generous pass defense in the NFL that was down 2 corners beyond where they were already down in the Baltimore Ravens. So it's not like the Ravens are slowing anybody down. So keep that in mind if you're playing your quarterbacks and passing components against them in the future. So, but I'm with you. I'd probably go Winston just because I think it's a more permanent move. I think with Flacco, I'm sure he can do well. We saw him last year with Cleveland do really well. If he's having that kind of run, they're not going to take him out, but they would like to get, the reporting is Stephen Holder from ESPN is usually dialed in on these things, and James Boyd from The Athletic, both really good reporters, seem to think this is just a temporary, hey, let's reset and get going again. This is not a Bryce Young, we surrender move. And we'll talk about the surrendering of the Carolina Panthers here momentarily when we get to the wide receivers. And we'll get to that as well, Chris. So that's kind of the thought there. So just again, if you're looking for quarterbacks, Matthew Stafford right now with Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp both back, probably available in most leagues. Seems like a great pickup. Jameis Winston, we're all on board. I'm on board with Bo Nix as a quarterback too in Superflex, and if you need somebody any given week, he could probably do it. And turns out he can take advantage of great matchups. Really like what I'm seeing of him, especially the rushing upside. And if you're in a bind this week, Malik Willis is for Green Bay going up against that Detroit defense in a big game, and a game where Detroit doesn't defend the pass very well. So no, not at all. And and you have a play caller. And you have a play caller, Matt LaFleur, who's going to scheme up different plays for Malik Willis as well. So I agree with you on that one. And it's funny. The only one of those the two quarterbacks are Malik Willis and Bo Nix that allow or offer you that rushing upside. The other ones, they're going to give you really no rushing upside at all. That's one of the reasons why I like those sneaky options, or at least a Malik Willis sneaky option.
I'm with you. And Scampers, the question is, when does Scampers sit in the guest chair? He has an open invitation, Steve. He seems to want to refuse it. I've been really nice about it, and I don't know, man. I don't know. I'll corner him again soon. So, yes, Jameis definitely over Flacco for us, just because it's a more permanent condition, it would appear. Absolutely. I know Dorian Thompson-Robinson may come back, but if Jameis keeps playing at even some modicum of what we've seen, that'll be the thing. There's not a lot of running backs this week. I know Sigmund Bloom mentioned that in his article. You should go to Football Guys. Always check out his sleeper, his waiver wire article on Tuesdays, people. It's fantastic. It's gold. His list is Blake Corum, Jalen Wright, Jaleel McLaughlin. I threw in there. He doesn't have him. Isaac Garendo is kind of like a little bit of a speculative play. I actually had him in some lineups this past week, just because I had no choices, and it ended up being kind of delightful. So he likes a speculative play with Marshawn Lloyd. Do you see any meat on that bone in Green Bay?
No, I think Josh Jacobs is the guy now. We see the last couple of weeks they're giving him the rock, they're giving him the load, and then not only that, he's scoring, he's getting opportunities, he's running hard. He's the guy that I think it's going to be the running back there for Green Bay. But I want to go back and talk about Isaac Garendo a little bit.
Do it.
I understand. Look, I get it. I get the whole Christian McCaffrey. He's supposed to be ramping up this week. He's supposed to, in the bye week, he's going to be working out, getting himself back ready to play. But Coach Kyle Shanahan, I read one of his last reports on 49ers.com, and it said that if things go well, and to me, that's that little word, if things go well, that's great. But what if they don't? And the same thing with Jordan Mason is this AC joint sprain that he's now had twice. Is it how bad is the sprain? I don't know if we're going to get a lot of information. I haven't seen anything just yet, especially with them being on the bye week. I'm holding on to Isaac Garendo. I think that is definitely a speculative ad, like you said, but that is a guy that I'm holding on to because you want a running back in the Kyle Shanahan offense. He's shown speed. He's shown the burst. He's shown he has a little bit of vision as well. I think that he's the play for me out of this running back group. It's Isaac Garendo above the other ones.
Right. Look, I'm holding on to Jordan Mason where I have him. I think the shoulder should be cleared up in a week since he's been able to play through it. But also, I think McCaffrey's going to be back. But I don't know how hard they push him, right? Maybe they slow roll him in. Maybe he's more a play that they kind of wait it out and see how they're looking for the playoffs and postseason. So yeah, exactly. I don't think it's a 100% given that Christian McCaffrey comes back as the de facto running back one in all of fantasy and everything's good. And by the way, this is AI bot is totally untrue. I'm not going to give away any secrets, but I have spent like an hour in very close proximity with Mr. Scampers in real life, and it was joyous, and he's very warm and very fuzzy. That's all I'm saying. I'm going to stop there. Not going to go any deeper on this. Not going to give away any company secrets. So Marshawn Lloyd, I saw a commendation, comment, Jacobs is it, man. Jacobs is killing it. But is like, I know Matt Waldman likes Chris Brooks. Is it possible we'll see Chris Brooks as like the direct backup to Jacobs, and then these other guys, whether it's Lloyd or Emmanuel Wilson, end up being the receiving asset more?
Yeah, I like the Brooks call on that one. That is a good one. I do think that he could be the direct backup. I still think Lloyd is actually still on IR, so that is a situation we got to
be activated this week. They're talking about.
They're talking about it. I'm gonna wait and see approach, but I do think that yes, the direct adversary to Jacobs is going to be Chris Brooks. I believe that.
Yeah, I think, and by the way, I mean, Jonathan Brooks has taught us all, if we're getting too big for our britches, thinking someone's coming back, maybe we should say the same about McCaffrey, right? Because they're not going to open his window until Wednesday. Bear with us on tips, internet, please, people. But if they're not going to bring him back until, they're not going to open the window until next Monday. He gets like 5 informal practice sessions this week, right? So they don't have to open the window until the following Monday. they'll still have 3 weeks after that. The discussion has been, for the most part, that they're going to and again, bear with us. Tips, internet's been a little in and out, but I think we got them dialed in right now. But
yeah, I'm back.
But if they give us a 3-week window, the expectation all along has been we'll see him the week 10 game against the Buccaneers. This is what the reporting's been for 3 weeks now. And we're seeing it follow along in that way. We'll see if it plays out like that, right? We just don't know. And if week 1 taught us anything, it's not to make any hard and fast positions with Christian McCaffrey until we have a good reason to. So we'll go with that for right now. So we do have some, with receiver, waiver wire is a little thicker tip, and I want to get into that. We'll start with Cedric Tillman, but I want to get a couple questions. By the way, Scampers did not enjoy Brooks, but I'll tell you what, Matt Wallman loves Brooks and has for seems like 1,000 years. So let's go into the wide receivers. We have a couple questions that I think are kind of good for the, just for the starting point of this. Now we'll start with the news at the position. 2 things. Stephon Diggs has the ACL. We know he's done for the year. Nico Collins still a week away. So we've got that. Then Deontay Johnson traded to the Baltimore Ravens. I feel like this move is not what investors wanted, right? Because right now the second leading receiver in Baltimore, or the wide receiver, is averaging 4.4 targets a game. I know there are people out there who cover the team on a daily basis that think this is a depth move and it'll be random plays here and there. Where are you at on Deontay Johnson as a Baltimore Raven?
Yeah, so as far as with Deontay Johnson, yeah, you said it just right. It's not what fantasy owners wanted as far as him moving to a team where, look, they're wanting to run the ball. That is their MO. That's what they want to do. That is who they got. That's why they got Derrick Henry. So that is the reasoning. So now you look at a situation where you have Zay Flowers, you have Deontay Johnson. Deontay Johnson is going to be good working the middle of the field when Lamar Jackson is in trouble, running those scramble drills. He's going to be able to help. But the thing is, when you were in Carolina, and look, the Baltimore defense, as far as a pass game, hasn't been what it's been. But the Carolina Panthers are giving up 33 points a game. We'll talk a little bit more about what they do as well. But they're giving up a ton of points. So they're in a lot of situations where they have to play catch up. They have to try to put points on the board. That was advantageous to Deontay Johnson. But this is a situation where Baltimore Ravens have found themselves in positive game scripts. Yeah, they'll be up big and they'll have to, finish the game. The game's usually closer than what it maybe should have been. But they're in a lot of positive game scripts, and that could kind of eat away at Deontay Johnson's fantasy value. So I'm curious to see what happens here. I think it really does hurt Rashad Bateman too. I was really big on Rashad Bateman coming in these last few weeks, and I think this kind of hurts him as well. But the thing about Rashad Bateman, they like to use him down the field. So that would be something that you got these 2 intermediate guys, although Zay Flowers can be used down the field too. You got the 2 intermediate guys along with Mark Andrews, and then maybe pop it off to Bateman as well. So it's going to be an offense that I think that it's going to be good for NFL football. But I do think that the Deontay Johnson owners, I think they're going to have to temper expectations a little bit. Where he was a wide receiver 1 in some weeks, now he might be that wide receiver 2 flex option.
So Bloom checked in with guy Ken Cusick, who he admires greatly at Ravens Film Study, and he sees this as a depth move. If Bateman or Flowers miss time, the Ravens could be very happy with the move, but this is going to hurt Aguilar. So that tells you where we see Johnson in the pecking order. He does not see it hurting Zay Flowers, who's getting not an immense target share, but he's certainly leading the team here. I think 20-some%. But everybody else is trailing, right? It's Flowers in the field, and the next receiver I think is 15. I think it's 15% for Bateman. So I think this is not a great move, and I think kind of like Bloom has been kind of suggesting in our conversations behind the scenes, this is maybe indicative that Johnson's not easy to get along with. The fact that the Carolina is eating $3 million of his salary, that they're giving him and a pick, him and a 6th-round pick for a 5th-round pick, kind of tells you maybe, and this is the second time he's been traded in a year. We've kind of seen this with Steelers receivers in the past. I've said Antonio Brown and others, right? They're just like they get really good receivers, but some of them are a little bit flaky. So we'll see how this goes going forward. For the Carolina Panthers, I know on my list of wide receivers, I'll throw out the whole list here real quick. Cedric Tillman, Josh Downs, Keon Coleman, Juwan Jennings, Ricky Pearsall, Xavier Legette from the Panthers, Elijah Moore to go with Cedric Tillman. I think he's a viable play. Parker Washington, we'll talk about him. I think he's in a good spot. Keyshawn Boutte and Xavier Hutchinson with Stephon Diggs down. I think here's the problem for me with Legette and the Panthers. The Carolina Panthers are scoring 124 points a game. Only 2 teams score fewer points than those. And I'm fine. I talk about this a lot on the programs is, it's fine having the top players on horrible offenses. Like bad offenses doesn't mean a guy that can't be productive. We see it all the time, but don't mind the depth on those offenses. And I feel like that's kind of what you're doing with Legette. Like, I'm not against it. Where are you at on rostering Xavier Legette? How deep of a bench would you need to have?
Yeah, I feel like for me, for some of my teams, I think you do have to have a pretty deep bench in order to have Legette. I'm looking at Legette as like a wide receiver 6 right now, wide receiver 7 possibly. So you would have to have, pretty, and this is in most leagues that I'm in are 3 wide receiver leagues. So I have 3 wide receivers. Usually a flex could be a wide receiver. So that's where I'm looking at Legette right now. This Carolina offense, man, until Andy Dalton gets back on the field or when Andy Dalton gets back on the field, I might lean a little bit more towards Legette. But right now, I would just add him as a speculative ad, like we talked about with other players. I would add him as a speculative ad and then just hope and pray that Andy Dalton comes back.
Yeah.
Because with Bryce Young there.
I think, Young had a decent game against the Denver Broncos, but I just think it's going to be hard to get consistent production beyond the frontline press. Now, like, is it worth investing? I don't know. I want to see what does Bloom have him down for? Like 10 to 15% to find out if he is the top threat over Adam Thielen? Are we sure Adam Thielen is going to be the guy coming back from IR?
I would say 10% would be the most I would get on him on Legette.
Right.
And Adam Thielen would be somebody I would target because we saw that combination of Bryce Young and Adam Thielen last year. So I would go after Adam Thielen. Again, if the price is right, again, he's on IR 5% low ball because you got a lot of people not even looking at somebody like Adam Thielen. So if you have some space on your roster, we have some bye weeks that are coming up and you have an extra kicker, you want to get rid of a kicker. Yeah, if you can't get one of these guys that we spoke about, Adam Thielen would be somebody I would probably recommend as well.
All right. By the way, everybody, you're just joining us. Hi, I'm Bob Harris. Damn glad to meet you. Footballguys.com is the website. You can catch me there every Thursday with Fantasy Notebook, every Friday. My polarizing players with Gary Davenport every Saturday. My in and out column, where many of the players we're talking about were mentioned this week. Every day except Tuesday on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 10 to midnight. You'll catch me Saturdays, 8 to 11 on Fantasy Channel and NFL Radio and on the pregame show on Sundays from 11 to 1 with Jeff Mans. You'll catch me every morning, 5:30 a.m., the Daily Update Podcast, 10 minutes of quick news and information, a little bit of analysis, just to kind of start the day right. Like, who doesn't want some fantasy news to start the damn day? Everyone likes that. And Tip Major is with me. Tip and I have some history. We go back, hosted a show together last year on the Spaces. Tip, you can follow, of course, on the X Machine at Tip Major, 2 P's, just like it's spelled everywhere. And Tip, tell everyone else where else they can find you.
Yeah, I'm also with the Sports Affiliation. I do a Thursday checkdown show with Greg Kellogg, another Hall of Famer as well, just like yourself, Bob. So we do a show on Thursday nights before the game, and that's usually where you can find me on Thursday nights. And then after the game, I do the Rip and Tip space on X as well. And then also on Wednesday nights, we do a 32-bit podcast with Natter as well in the 32-bit company.
Love the 32-bit people.
It's real fun having to love it. Yeah,
love that group. A lot of friends there, and have a lot of connections, and have done a lot of stuff with them because I like them. I like them a lot, and it's how I got hooked up with Tip in the first place. And then you got hooked up. It's funny because the kind of the serendipity there is that you get in cahoots with Greg Kellogg, who I've been in cahoots with to some degree going back to 1996. Greg and I did a webcast in 1998. It was probably the first fantasy football webcast using real audio technology, which was not all that great, but we made it work. So good times, Greg Kellogg, and glad that you guys are working together. So going back to these receivers here, Josh Downs, a little more interesting with the notion that Joe Flacco will be starting.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Look, if you had Josh Downs, you should have never dropped him in the first place. And if you did, this is a guy that I'm spending a lot of fab on. I would recommend going 25, 30, 40% on this guy because, look, now with Flacco back in the helm, we saw Josh Downs. Josh Downs is just that good. He can get it done both ways with either quarterback. But now with Joe Flacco, now we're going to start to see some of those receptions start to spike back up. And that's where in a PPR league, which most of us play in, that's where you're really going to appreciate Josh Downs.
Right. So just a quick question, not on my list, Jakobi Meyers. If he's fallen through the cracks in leagues, I think he's a viable pickup. He'll be the top non-tight end receiving asset, like non-tight end. Brock Bowers is not a tight end, people. He's a wide receiver. Yeah. He's a tight end in name only, but that's fine. You can play him like that. Jakobi Meyers finished last year as wide receiver 24, I want to say. And he's always better than you realize. It just seems like he is. So, yeah, I'm not against I think he should be. I don't know if I prioritize him. I don't know if I burn my priority pick on him, but unless I was in really dire straits. Again, this is not a great offense. He's maybe not the top receiving assets, said Brock Bowers. So there'd be that. Keon Coleman, an interesting name. I've been kind of keen on Keon Coleman since he was drafted. I was on the Football Guys live stream during the draft. I predicted he would be the pick, and I touted his remarkable skills as something that Josh Allen could take advantage of. Better still, Josh Allen sees his skills as something Josh Allen could take advantage of. This is the key to this success here, right? What do you think about him? Is it sustainable success?
I think it is definitely sustainable. And when you bring on a wide receiver like Amari Cooper, who is a route running specialist, can catch the ball down the sideline, can hit those backyard NFL football plays that that you don't screen up, but they just are scramble drills. He's that type of guy, Amari Cooper, and that only helps Keon Coleman. That helps him in the pass game. That helps him in the red zone. That helps him all over the field. So I love Keon Coleman. A lot of people should have already, again, this is a guy that you should have kept on your team anyway, though he wasn't doing much at the beginning of the season. It's something that I knew that over time it would click. And now it's starting to click, and Amari Cooper is helping that. So I love Keon Coleman. I think that's a great pickup.
I give you a single San Francisco wide receiver. You only get a chance at one. Are you going with Juwan Jennings, who's semi-proven, or Ricky Pearsall, who's more promised than proven?
I'm going after Cooper Kupp 2.0. Yeah, I said it. Cooper Kupp 2.0, Ricky Pearsall. I think that this guy is fun. He's fun to watch. He does all the dirty stuff. He does the Cooper Kupp-esque plays that I watched over when they played against Dallas. And, it's not ever really flashy or pretty or anything like that, but they can utilize them all over the field. Yeah, they still have Deebo Samuel there, but I like Ricky Pearsall. I think that we've only seen the beginning, and we're going to see a lot more from him going forward. Once Brock Purdy and him start to get that connection going, I think that this could be a possible go-to for Brock Purdy.
I am the more conservative person on this panel. It turns out I'm going to go Juwan Jennings, who has been money when there's been a role for him, right? And I do think he'll be the starter opposite Deebo Samuel. We saw one huge game this year. Not expecting those numbers, but I'm with you. I think there's a lot to like about Ricky Pearsall, and I wouldn't mind having him. I don't know that I would spend a heck of a lot more on Jennings than I would on Pearsall. I think 25 is the upper limit. I know that's what Bloom has him down as, and I think Pearsall more in the 20% range. So I think that's perfectly fine. Coleman or Downs? I think this is an easy question for me, Tip. If I'm in a PPR league or I just need a guy to help me avoid zeros, I think it's probably Downs. If I need a big swing for the fence play, and Downs can maybe be both those things depending on who his quarterback is, right? Or maybe even not. I mean, almost had 2 TDs in this game. Am I underestimating Downs' big playability?
I think you are, Bob, because look, Downs, again, I just talked about him before. He is that guy that just can do it all for this team. He can do it in the short game, the intermediate, and in the long game. Michael Pittman Jr. is more of their intermediate short guy. long, red zone threat. But Josh Downs can do it all. The coach loves Josh Downs. He always talking about his work ethic. I think that Josh Downs is a number one priority if he's still out there. Again, shame on the person who dropped him, because you should not have dropped this guy, because even Anthony Richardson made him relevant. He's that good of a wide receiver. And I think that whoever goes out there and gets him, I think, again, 35-40% is what I'm looking to spend on Josh Downs this week.
So I will recount a story from James Boyd of The Athletic, who is pretty close follower of this club. And talking to him in August, he was predicting, and this was before we knew Anthony Richardson was not going to be good. He was predicting that Josh Downs would lead this team in receptions over Michael Pittman. So there's something to hang your hat on, whoever the quarterback is. And I think what we saw in this game, where the touchdown pass was so close on the second one, and the one was good. So I'm probably with you here. I'd probably rather have Josh Downs and Coleman. And I think it's not even close, right? Like I think I'd way more rather have him. I know Bloom has the money at like 20 to 40% for up to 40% for Downs and 25% for Coleman. I think that's probably about the separation that I see as well. So let's go. We got a question about Coker and Parker Washington. Coker, I'm going to kind of say we covered when I talked about Carolina. If you just tuned in, I'm all about, one or two players on bad offenses. I'm not digging that deep. Maybe Coker rises up and becomes the best player there. Have you seen any sign of that? I mean, there's been moments. Have you seen any signs that he's ready to move ahead of, let's say, Leggett or Adam Thielen in the pecking order?
No. So for me, it's Parker Washington out of those two. Definitely the Parker Washington for me, because for the simple fact that, look, they're going to be without Christian Kirk for some time now with the broken clavicle. So now you're dealing with the situation where Parker Washington gets right to that slot position where Christian Kirk was. And then Brian Thomas Jr. was, with the chest injury, supposed to be missing a couple of weeks. Now he's showing that he's day-to-day. So it doesn't make any changes for me on as far as Coker. I think that if you had a situation where Brian Thomas Jr. is out, maybe. But with me, I'm going Parker Washington all day, every day for the Jags offense, because I do agree with you. It is sometimes okay to have a number one or a wide receiver on a bad offense, especially a guy who's going to be a possession guy, because they're always going to be down. There are going to be opportunities for shootouts. There are going to be opportunities for Parker Washington, which I think that they will get. And one other thing that I really like about Parker Washington, too, is if you're in a Scott Fishbowl league or FF7s, which give you return yardage, Parker Washington is their kickoff and punt returner as well. So I'm still going Parker Washington.
I wonder, though, if the situation they now have a wide receiver where he is a vital piece doesn't limit him in those roles. We'll find out. I'm with you. I think Parker Washington's in a good spot. He was the guy that was the direct replacement last year. He wasn't ready. He looks more ready this year. The question for me is, can he post Christian Kirk numbers? Well, I hope so. It's 27 catches on the year. Come on. But I'll also acknowledge that Trevor Lawrence has played better the last month, right? He's completed 72% of his passes. Yes. He's got some decent yardage. Some of that's due to Brian Thomas Jr., though, playing really well too. So, but I'm with you. I think that Parker's a pretty damn good pickup right now, and wouldn't mind having him on a roster, especially as we get back into the bye sessions here that are coming. We've got some really big bye weeks coming up. Not as interested in Kayshon Boutte, but with the situation, let's talk about Xavier Hutchinson, John Mechie III, Robert Woods. Is Hutchinson the guy there for you with Diggs out and Collins still 2 weeks away?
Yeah, it's kind of, for me, it's kind of like wait and see approach, especially with the Hutchinson, because I talked about Hutchinson whenever Nico Collins went out. When Nico Collins went out, I was kind of like, okay, this might be an opportunity for Hutchinson. I wanted to check him out. But I will say I still on hold with him. I do like John Mechie III, though. I think that one could be one of the sneakier plays. He's one of those guys who can play in the slot. He can get passes that way, kind of like where Stephon Diggs was going. They were lining him up in the slot quite a bit. This is a situation where, I would go Mechie, but if we could talk about it, and I know we're going to talk about tight ends a little bit later, I might be recommending Dalton Schultz.
Fair enough. So, like, I think Hutchinson has kind of been the direct replacement for Collins. I think he's fine. I think you're taking your chances here, right? With any of these guys not named Tank Dell and Nico Collins when Nico Collins is back. It might be hit or miss for all of them. And I think the guy you're talking about, I mean, I think they're just going to lean into Tank Dell, Joe Mixon, and Dalton Schultz. And that probably makes perfect sense. We did have a couple other wide receiver type questions here I wanted to get to here. I think did we get them all? So Adam Thielen or Davis or Elijah Moore. So I talked a little bit about Elijah Moore being maybe a viable pickup with Jameis Winston in, as is Cedric Wilson. Maybe if Jerry Jeudy's out there floating around. I don't know. I'm not excited about Jerry Jeudy. I have the blind spot for Jerry Jeudy for some reason. I might be more interested. But what do you think of this one? Thielen, Davis, or Elijah Moore? Davis a little beat up right now, has the shoulder issue.
Right, it's more for me on this one. It's pretty easy. Look, the first in this last week, week 12, he had 12 targets and he caught 8 of those. From weeks 4 to week 7, he had 12 targets total. All it took was Jameis Winston to come into this game and give these players opportunities. And so with Elijah Moore, that's the one that I'm looking at. Although I will say this, Elijah Moore is playing one of the toughest defenses against the slot receiver this week in Chargers. That's something that I would, maybe not playing him this week, but you definitely go out there and get him, because I think everybody's going to have a share of, some days, some weeks where they're gonna shine. And hey, we might have a week where all of them shine like we did last week. So that's a situation where I would pick up Elijah Moore out of those 3. But I would wait to play him because the Chargers defense is allowing 13 points per game. The Carolina Panthers, guys, are allowing 14 points in the second quarter. Like, this is amazing. It's crazy how good this Chargers defense has been so far this year. So this Chargers defense, and allowing points being scored and yardage for passing. So yeah, this Chargers defense is pretty stingy against the pass.
So we had a lot of questions last week about which Bucs receiver to play, and my answer was Cedric Tillman. I hope you all listened to me, because the Bucs receiver, I don't know that we're going to find out. So the questions here, Jay wants to know why the Bucs didn't make a move for a wide receiver. And Steve wants to know, if you picked up McMillan last week, should he keep trying to hold on to him, or should he grab some of this week's list as well? How do you see the Buccaneers receiving core playing out? Because we all saw Raheem Jarrett coming out of nowhere to be the best of that group, that nobody talked about him. We were all looking at the other guys.
Yeah, and I was wrong, because I was really big on Sterling Shepard. I don't know why I went and talked myself into a old eight-year veteran who's had a ton of injuries. But I just like the fact that he was a slot guy, and Baker Mayfield likes to throw to the slot. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers like to throw to the slot. So I just thought it was more of a Sterling Shepard. I'm willing to give McMillan another shot just because of how good this Tampa Bay offense is. Look, Liam Cohen has this offense humming right now. For them to still score 30 points again against the Atlanta Falcons or close to it, that right there tells me that this offense hasn't lost a step, although they've lost 2 really high-profile wide receivers and possibly a Hall of Famer in Mike Evans for the foreseeable future. So I still would hold on to McMillan just because Baker Mayfield he's on fire right now. What is he thrown 20 touchdowns so far this year, or over 20 touchdowns so far this year? It's crazy how good Baker Mayfield has been. The offensive line has been pretty good holding him up. And then not only that, their run game, it's not been the greatest, although this last game, they showed flashes, and Rachaad White is starting to come back into the helm of things as well. So I'm really good to see. I'm really happy to see that, because a lot of people were getting on me about Rachaad White. But I still think you hold on to McMillan.
So, I would probably hold on to the one that I picked up, and I don't know if Jarrett's going to be the guy. Or I think it's fair to say that Cade Otton is going to be one of the guys, and that Rachaad White is going to be one of the guys that Baker Mayfield leads on, at least until Mike Evans comes back. So we'll talk a little bit about that. I want to circle back around to a running back question that we didn't get to. Rest of season. Go ahead, Tip.
And Bob, I was just going to say one person I would go with Elijah Moore over Sterling Shepard. So those that went out there and got Sterling Shepard, like myself, if you have Sterling Shepard and Elijah Moore is there, what I did was I dropped or I'm in the process of dropping, Elijah Moore or Sterling Shepard to get Elijah Moore, I would do that right away.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable assessment. So Ron is thin at running back for the rest of the season. So how do you see Spears, Guerrero, I think it means Guerrero, and Jalen Wright? He has Kyron, Brian Robinson, Mason, Kamani Vidal, Blake Corum, and Jonathan Brooks. So on Jonathan Brooks, it was interesting last Friday when Dave Canales was asked, is it possible you don't activate him? This is the last week of his 21-day, 3-week window. And Canales was asked, is it possible you might not activate him? And Dave Canales said, yes, this is possible. So as we see this team trade away assets like Deontay Johnson, this may be a time when discretion is a better part of valor, and Jonathan Brooks is saved until next year, right? I think we've got a frozen tip.
Yeah, I lost you there, Bob. So, all right. What did you say now?
So is it possible we're going to see, would you be avoiding this situation? Like Jonathan Brooks, you need to cover that. So Spears, Guerrero, Jalen Wright, which of those, rank those three as you'd like them the rest of the season?
Okay. So the thing about Jalen Wright for me is Jalen Wright has not had a snap percentage over 10% since Mostert has been back. So that right there, I'm kind of a red flag, but you have to keep him because of the situation that they could both get injured. Mostert or Devon Achane, they haven't been the most durable. So you kind of have to keep him there. I get it. I understand. But for me, I still like Isaac Guerrero just for the simple fact that we don't know what the future is going to hold. Listening to the game on Sunday night against the Dallas Cowboys, I heard Chris Collinsworth say something that spoke to me. He said that this run game that the San Francisco 49ers have produced so far this season, it's been doing pretty well. And when Christian McCaffrey comes back, he was saying that, and it doesn't sound crazy, that what is to say that they don't put Christian McCaffrey out there to catch passes, not to run the ball so much. Put him in space, get him, and that's what they can do. So if they do something like that, I think that Isaac Guerrero or Jordan Mason, depending on how the Jordan Mason's shoulder is, they can still be relevant. So I'm going to say Isaac Guerrero on that one for me is the top one. I know a lot of people, it's not popular because a lot of people are like, you got Jordan Mason there and you've got Christian McCaffrey supposedly coming back. But then again, we still just don't know what the future is going to hold with this team.
Yeah, these are all contingent upside guys. I'd go Jalen Wright myself, but totally get the Guerrero thing. And Spears, again, it's bad offense. If he gets the primary role, maybe I'm more interested. But even at that, I'm not incredibly interested. Another running back question. Trade, have Madison, Etienne, Mostert, Moss, Davis. My wide receivers are St. Brown. Wow. You got to help us a little more than this, Michael. And so not really sure what you want to do. Thinking offering downs for Tracy. So
I would keep Downs. I would keep Downs. Tracy, though, look, although Tracy looked good, he did have that head injury at the end of the game there. So that's something to monitor.
He's in the protocol. They've got Washington this week. They have Carolina next week. If I need a short-term play, Tracy's probably it. But I don't know that I've given up for Downs. You do have a need at running back, and he is a rising star. I would go ahead and do this. And I would help us out with better questions next time. It's kind of hard to decipher some of this. But if we have it right, I would give up Downs for Tracy, given your circumstances, because ETN's taken kind of a backseat to Tank Bigsby. Mostert's it's going to be a week-to-week crapshoot. Same with Moss. Whichever this Davis is, I don't know. But Madison, yeah. So I would probably want a frontline play, and I think Tracy's coming on. So give me a first initial with last names that are common. It helps out a little bit. I'm old. I process slowly. I apologize for that. It's part of the deal with me. So let's look at the tight ends real quick here before we get to the final questions of the evening. And once again, everybody, I'm Bob Harris. He's Tip Major. You can find me at Football Guys. You can find him at Sports Affiliation and 32-Bit. You can find him on his X feed at Tip Major. You'll find all his work there and all his show schedules and all kinds of stuff like that going on. All right. So the tight ends on the list, it's a fairly short list for me this week. Zach Ertz, who I think is, it seems like he's every tight end this year. like every tight end who is not Brock Bowers or Trey McBride or, one of the top guys is Zach Ertz or Mike Gesicki. You're playing whack-a-mole. Are you interested in playing whack-a-mole?
Zach Ertz possibly, but now we've seen Ben Sinnott, we've seen other tight ends in that offense come alive. So Zach Ertz possibly. The whole Gesicki thing, no, I'm just not buying into it. So either one of those, I wouldn't waste a claim pick on them. The tight end to get for me this week, if K Dotton's is available, he should not be available. First of all, it's Dalton Schultz for me. Look, he's got a couple of tough matchups, but he does get some matchups against Dallas. He gets some matchups against Jacksonville, and in week 16, which is championship week or the week before championship week, depending on how your league falls. They're playing the Kansas City Chiefs, and we all know what the Kansas City Chiefs do against tight ends. And if there's a situation where Nico Collins doesn't respond well when he comes back, we already know Stephon Diggs is going to be out. So this team is thin at receiving options. So that right there tells me Dalton Schultz, week 16, Kansas City, if you happen to so be in the playoffs at that time, that would be a smash play because Kansas City's given up 7 receptions a game and 80 yards to the tight end position. So they're not getting a lot of touchdowns, but they're giving up some yards.
So Scamper's throwing out the Hunter Henry out there, but also he mentions the Jags. Brenton Strange is going to keep playing with Ingram, who, by the way, what a great touchdown catch. But mentioning tight ends and Jaguars in the same breath reminds me this might be one more week to play Grant Calcaterra if there is no Dallas Goedert, because the Jaguars cannot cover the tight end. They just don't have the people to do it. And yes, Hunter is a Drake Mays guy. Let's hope Drake Mays is back on the field soon. So yeah, I'm with you. Mike Gesicki doesn't thrill me. I'm not out there spending a lot of money. These are not players I'm highly interested in. But if you're in a pinch and you're rotating through these guys, and I don't disagree with this. When T Higgins out, he is viable. We'll see how long T Higgins is out. But if there is T, no, thank you. Yes, I would agree with that. Let's see what we got here. A couple questions here to close it all out. Thanks everyone for coming. Appreciate your time every week, and thank you for your patience, and thanks Tip for hanging in there, battling the interwebs. I appreciate you for that. So let's see. We do have
I blame her.
Here.
I blame Hurricane Barrel on the internet, because ever since we got decimated over here with the internet, or with the hurricane back a few months ago, my internet has been really bad. We've had the guys come out here, check it out. I am using my cell phone right now, guys.
We made the switch before the show to see if it got better, and it did get better.
It got way better.
Right. So here's a question from William Taylor. Drop Ferguson for Otten. Drop Ray Davis for Tracy. I have Cook standard non-PPR. I'm going to go ahead and jump on the ladder. You're going to have no Tracy probably this week, but next week and after that, he has got a Carolina, then the bye. So, you're going to probably miss 2 games out of the next 3 or so. So that's worth taking into account. Where do you stand on this one?
Yeah, I like the Otten. I just don't know about dropping Ferguson. And Ferguson's still a viable option in this offense with Dallas. So I do like dropping the Ray Davis, although I like Ray Davis too, because what if James Cook, that is your backup. That is your handcuff right there. So for me, it's kind of tough, but yeah, you want to have those Tracy shares, especially going against Carolina. Maybe there's a couple other people on your team. Maybe you have an extra kicker because of bye weeks coming up, maybe something like that. But I would really refrain from dropping either one of those because they hold a little bit of value. The running backs hold value for you because you have James Cook with Ray Davis, but I understand you want to get Tracy. And then the Jake Ferguson situation, that's someone I would probably, you can't trade him 1-for-1, but maybe look to package him in a deal with somebody because K. Dotton, I believe, is the guy that's going to really flourish in Tampa Bay.
I think a consistently productive tight end. Ferguson is not that. I mean, just hasn't been tight end 18 on the season. So it's where we're at, right? You divorce the name from the numbers at this point in your draft capital and your investment in them, and you go for the guy who's getting the job done. I would do the dropping Ray Davis for Tracy, but this is the point of the season where you start, losing your depth and adding frontline talent. I think Tracy down the stretch, could be a league-winning guy, though. I mean, the 2 games we saw him prior to this week, well, including this week, I got 2 huge games against Seattle and then again against Pittsburgh. So I would probably want to have that over my handcuff, realizing that there is some concern there. So I totally get it, but I'm probably getting that point of the season where I'm making that shift. Drop Christian Watson for Elijah Moore.
This is a tough one, but I think you want to have. I believe the Browns' offense is a little bit more. It's a little bit more of a situation where you're going to get points from all of the receivers consistently, more than with the Green Bay Packers. Look, it looks like it's Romeo Doubs for there. Then you have Jaden Reed. Then you have possibly Tucker Kraft coming out there also as well. So you've got a lot of wide receivers, a lot of mouths to feed. They don't throw the ball a ton. And Green Bay, they do when they are behind, but when they're up, they're going to run the ball. They're going to try to close the clock out. So I would recommend dropping. Yes, I would recommend in this case dropping Christian Watson and getting Elijah Moore on the team. I would do it.
Yeah, I think if you need to avoid a player that'll help you avoid zeros, I still like Christian Watson. I still want to keep him. I didn't draft him as anything more than a wide receiver 4. So hopefully I have the depth of the guys ahead of him. But if injuries and attrition have hit and I need a solid weekly play, I might give more shot. But I'm more leaning into keeping Watson because for what I drafted him to be a high upside guy. Drop Colby Parkinson at this point? Probably yes. Along with Mike Gesicki any given week, along with Hunter Henry any given week. Well, not Hunter Henry, but I mean, he's one of those guys that's just a rotational guy. So I think you can move on. He's no Will Dissly. Let's just say that. I'd rather fire the dismissal right now.
Yeah, I like Will Dissly. Yeah, that call as well. But yeah, I would definitely drop Parkinson. He's got to go, especially with Puka Nacua back, Cooper Kupp back. They're not trading anyone, it doesn't seem like. So yeah, it looks like it.
Is McConkey a possible league winner based on what we've seen the last couple of weeks with the passing game coming on? I think Tip's frozen up. I'd be willing, I might be willing to do that if Tip doesn't come back in and chime in. Love what I've seen from McConkey. The passing game for the Chargers is lighting up enough for me to want to jump in there and have a piece of that. McConkey's a piece I'd want to have. Would I say Deontay Johnson's droppable for Cedric Tillman? I might say that, yes. I'm not against that notion. Right now, like Deontay Johnson, again.
There we go. I am back. Okay.
There we go. I knew you'd be back. So I feel like this is aggressive, but would you drop Deontay Johnson for Cedric Tillman?
Yeah, I wouldn't do that. That is a little too aggressive. There's got to be somebody else you can drop on your team, unless your team's just that stacked. There's got to be another player on your team that you can drop. I wouldn't do that. I would not recommend.
I might,
especially going to a new team. I understand. If there wasn't, I understand that they might be a little scared. A new team, new philosophy. He might be missing, but you have to wait it out. With as good as this Baltimore Ravens offense has looked and has been, you have to wait it out. You have to see what's going to happen. And I would hate to tell somebody to drop that, and then later on down the season, Deontay Johnson is doing Deontay Johnson things because he's gotten in the playbook, he's gotten his head together, and they're just rolling. So I would hold off on doing that. Although Cedric Tillman has looked phenomenal since Jameis Winston has taken over center, but I still could not recommend that just yet.
So this is dependent on you, Jason. It's a 2-game sample size. I'm leaning towards doing this. I'd rather have the wide receiver 1 in an offense that looks like it's going to be able to throw the ball all of a sudden, rather than the wide receiver 3 in an offense that would much rather run the football. And if they're ahead, the game script works out for them, they will keep running the ball. And where the wide receiver 2 is getting 4.4 targets a game, and he's not even the wide receiver 2, I would be a little more aggressive to do that. I do get, look, there's no doubt Deontay Johnson has a better body of work to lean into. ESPN's open rating, he is the best receiver in that rating over the last 2 years, right? So he's not chopped liver. I just don't like the situation as much as I like Tillman's situation. By the way, Tillman also not chopped liver.
Well, what about not dropping them? What about trading, possibly? I
think that's more something you want to look at.
I think when you say the word drop, it just like you're giving up on a player, and that's just not somebody I wanted to give up on. I would definitely, if you really want Cedric Tillman, which I would recommend, definitely getting him. But if you want to do something like that, I would recommend trading away Deontay Johnson.
Hey, cool cat. We're not doing lineup questions this week, but I'm usually going to go with a feature back like Jonathan Taylor over the wide receiver most times. So, but hit me up Saturday. I'll be
Especially
here
Flacco.
11 a.m. Eastern time this Saturday, every Saturday, doing nothing but talking lineup issues and news of the day and things like that. You can catch me here every darn week. Catch me here every Tuesday with a great guest, usually someone like almost as good as Tip Major. I don't know. We try. Tip, thanks so much for coming. Everyone go check Tip out on the X machine at Tip Major, 2 P's, Tip Major. Check his work at the sports affiliation and 32-bit. And you see him all around, floating around. I see him hosting spaces all the time, all kinds of stuff going on. And hopefully one of these times we can get back together on the spaces and start doing some stuff together again. My schedule has been pretty hectic, but we'll get there. Mr. Scamper says, "Go Dodgers." I don't have a dog in that fight, right? Like doesn't matter to me. I'm ambivalent. But anyway, so I'll be back. Catch all my work at footballguys.com. Listen to the daily update every morning. Comes out at 5:30, 10 minutes of news and analysis to get your day started right. Appreciate y'all coming. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time. Over and out.
Peace.